Hey folks, welcome back to Make It Good. As I've been setting up the tiny workshop for woodworking, I've been assessing what tools I have and what tools I need. And one of the things I realized I did not have is a woodworking mallet. So I decided to build one myself. I had this nice slab of mesquite wood that had some pretty grain, and I thought this nice hardwood would make a good mallet. So I designed the mallet at full size in Adobe Illustrator. That way I'm able to take each individual component, print it out, and use it as a template on the slab itself. I started by mocking up where I wanted these components to land on the slab. I wanted to choose the best wood that was free of cracks and holes for each component so that I could ensure that this mallet was structurally sound all the way throughout. Now I can divide up the template to make the marks where I can start breaking this slab down to size. The bandsaw makes quick work of these first cuts. Now I can start trimming off the sapwood and bark to leave nice clean wood for the planer. This mesquite slab was milled to just a hair over an inch thick. I wanted to keep most of that thickness because I prefer a nice meaty mallet, but I do need to have these faces planed nice and smooth for a proper glue up. So I'm taking very small incremental passes with the planer to get a nice smooth face without taking away too much thickness. I'll trim the paper template down to almost the final size, that way I can make my final placement on where I'm going to cut the wood. Now it's time to attach the templates to the wood itself. I've been playing around with the placement of each piece so that I have some overlapping and perpendicular grain. That way when all of these pieces are glued together, they're nice and strong and there's no breaking points. I'm using spray adhesive to put a light coat on the paper so that I can attach it to the wood. I do not want this to fully dry because I want to be able to pull the paper right back off as soon as I make the cuts. Back at the bandsaw, I'm making these cuts as close to the outer edge of these templates as I possibly can. I need to make sure that I'm following the shape as designed because everything needs to fit tightly together during the glue up. So I'm taking my time with these cuts and making sure that they get as close to the template as possible. Everything's cut up. Let's get this thing put together. Laid everything out, and you'll notice on the handle I've got some bug holes that I want to have covered up and in the glue up process. They'll hold glue nicely and you won't see them once everything's put together. So I've made some marks on the handle where I want that to sit within the mallet itself so those bug holes get covered up. So I'm going to do the bottom half of the mallet first, get that all glued up, and then come in and glue the top piece on separately. This way I can kind of monitor where everything sits and how it glues up as we go forward so that everything sits the way it's intended to. The pieces are clamped and they're all lining up pretty well. We'll let this sit overnight and come back to it tomorrow. As you can see, I added a couple more clamps just to get some extra pressure and give us a nice solid glue up all the way across. With me taking extra time to cut to the template on the bandsaw, these pieces really do fit together very well, just as I was hoping they would. I'm really liking the size and shape of this mallet. Once I have the additional piece glued on and once I shape up the handle, it ought to do pretty well in my big old hands. And finally I glue on the last piece. You may notice I haven't used any kind of wedge or other kind of device to hold the handle in place. This is an experiment on my end. It's completely intentional. I'm using a lot of wood glue on this thing, and there is wood glue holding it to every surface on the inside of the mallet, and I'm hoping that keeps it in place. Now I may be wrong and it may come out, and in that case I will address it by putting some sort of wedge or pin to hold the handle in place. But we'll see what it does for now. Well, there we go, all glued up, just needs to set up overnight. While I had it clamped down, I went ahead and sketched up the design of the handle, and this is something we can customize as we get it on the sander. This mallet really came together quite well. Cutting all the pieces out from a template really ensured that everything came out as designed. Now we're going to take it over to the sander and get everything flat so that we can start shaping this down to be a comfortable mallet to use. I've got the belt sander loaded up with 150 grit sandpaper. The idea here is get everything nice and flat. Remove the glue marks, remove the uneven edges from the glue up, and get this thing to a good starting point for shaping this down to the final piece. The dust from this hardwood tends to load up the sandpaper as you work, so I grab a eraser stick specifically for sandpaper to clear out all the dust from the sandpaper. Once you get that done, starts working like new again. Saves a lot of time and effort and money by not having to replace your sandpaper all the time. I'm working to try to hit every facet of the mallet I can on the belt sander just to save the time and effort of hand sanding these spots later on down the line. Some of these are harder to get to than others, but it does save me a little bit of time overall. Back over at the bandsaw, I'm cutting out along the line that I traced earlier for the basic shape of the handle. Using the bandsaw saves me some time in sanding and gives me a little bit more accurate following of that line. I'm using 100 grit sandpaper to take off the marks from the bandsaw and kind of do some final shaping on the handle. I'm also going over some of the areas I wasn't able to hit with the belt sander just to make sure this is all ready for the next steps. I designed the mallet with a 5-degree bevel on each end, and I wanted to match that on the sides of the head of the mallet. I could have done this on the bandsaw, but the handle was kind of getting in the way, so I took it over to the sander. and took off all the material just with 150 grit sandpaper. Now this made a ton of dust. If I had to do it over again, I probably would take this over to the bandsaw and make quicker work of it. It just took a lot of time, and there was a ton of dust. Even with my dust collection in the shop, it just made a mess. Once I was satisfied with these side bevels, I moved on to round over all of the corners on the mallet. This gives it a nice finished look, makes it more comfortable to use. I also use the belt sander to finalize the handle so that it's nice and comfortable to grip. I've got this mallet to a good shape from the belt sander, and now I'm making some final tweaks with some 220 grit sandpaper. I'm going over all the corners to make sure they're nice and even. I'm going over the handle to make sure it's most comfortable for my grip. And I'm going to give it an overall sanding so that it's ready for me to apply the finish. So the sanding is done. It feels good in my hand. It looks great. And I'm really looking forward to getting a finish on this. Quick trip over to the drill press to put a hole in the handle for hanging. And now the part I look forward to most, adding the finish to the mallet. I like using boiled linseed oil on tools. It's easy to apply, it really brings out the grain. And once you use the tool and kind of wear it in, it's really easy to reapply and keep a nice shine to it. It's a nice durable product, and I think it makes these types of woods look really, really nice. I love watching the grain just come to life as I apply the oil. This first pass I'm putting on really liberally, getting a good soaking all over the mallet. I'll come back with a clean rag, wipe it all down, let it sit, and then I'll come back and put another coat on. Once that second coat's on, it really pops. And here's the final mallet. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. It's real pretty grain in this mesquite. I think this is going to be a great tool for the shop. I've been really enjoying the process of putting this together. I hope you have too. Really appreciate you following along. If you like what you saw today, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos, please subscribe to the channel. If you do subscribe, hit that notification button so you know when I post new videos. I appreciate each and every one of you following along. Y'all get out there and make it good. Thanks a lot.